Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. Today I have 15 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you. Oh, and my favorite story I think this time, a cross between this first one, a love story in a way, and one involving trains. Yeah, let's get to it. Case file number 3216, written by technical handle 8775. A year and an apple. When I was 18 years old, I met my ex-boyfriend at an Apple store at the mall. The iPhone 8 had just been released, and I had been excited to buy it for weeks. When I got there was a long line of people waiting. Well, there he was, standing behind me in the line, and he asked if I was here to get the iPhone 8 too. I told him yes, and we talked for a while, and we went to a movie that night, and bonded over the fact that we had the same phone, and it was funny that it caused us to meet. A year goes by, and me, him, and his friend are in the car together, going to get a pizza. When we got back to the car, we were not able to find his phone. We ended up finding it a few minutes later, but it was a Samsung phone. Even his friend agreed it was his phone, but I know that it's not because we literally met at the Apple store. I looked through his phone, and there were photos of us, pictures in the mirror where his Android phone is apparent. Whenever asking him, he says we met at the mall, but not the Apple store. His family says he's never had apples, and his friends say the same. There were even Facebook posts he had made about how Android is better. To this day, I have no idea what happened. We are on good terms, and he still tells me he has never once in his life had an iPhone. So I think it's a classic case of quantum immortality, and I just love that can be classic because of the weird nature of the universe, the multiverse, really. You are in a different universe, one where there's one major difference where your boyfriend, you didn't meet him in the same spot, and he doesn't use the same kind of phone. A physical version of you still existed, which is why you can have pictures with him, and even though you didn't meet in the same place, you're still well suited and tailored for each other. I don't believe in soulmates, but I do believe in soul matches, you could say. There's not just one, and I think they transcend across multiple universes as long as you're not too different between them, and in most universes you are still basically you, which is why the soul mergers don't result in anything too bizarre happening. I do like that theory. I don't know about liking. I think it fits where the idea that if your soul merges it with a copy of yourself in a distant universe where you are very different, that fusion can result in schizophrenia, dementia, bipolar disorder, stuff like that, where you're just out of touch with reality because your reality is now split between two distinct universes. Enough to drive you crazy. But at least here, definitely not the case. Just a love story with a twist. Case file number 3217, written by Piper Bowes, Seminary Static. I used to volunteer reading and recording books for people who are blind or dyslexic. It was in a studio that was set up in a seminary school. It had a campus, library, a small cemetery, etc. It would just be me in a little recording booth reading through boring textbooks, mostly grammar and Spanish, glossaries, indexes, etc. One day, I was going through some conjugation exercises, and I knew I was getting really bored and sleepy, and was starting to mumble. So I stopped the session, stepped out to get a drink, and then put on my headphones back, to rewind to the last thing I said clearly, and start up again. The last thing I heard myself say, in Spanish, clearly, in a quiet, serious voice, but in my voice, was, "There are men. Those men are standing behind me," or something that loosely translated to that. I furiously looked through my book and found nothing even remotely close to that I could have been reading. I broke into a sweat, left, and never returned. And this was before the advent of AI cloning voices. It was my real voice that I spoke. Case file number 3218, written by Do You Want Ants, Lana. An unknown user is typing. At the time, I was working for a telemarketing company. I know, I'm the scum of the earth. And I was sitting at my station, reading through a new interview on my screen. The thing you have to understand about this place was that our equipment was fucking ancient. I'm pretty sure we were working on Macs from the late 80s or early 90s. Black screen with orange text on an 8x8 screen crap. So I was going through this interview and hit the spacebar to continue through it, and my computer just went black. Then, I see an ellipse being slowly typed out on my screen. The ... Okay, whatever. Must be an old loading image. Then I see my name typed out with a question mark after it. Thinking one of my supervisors is playing a joke on me, I kind of ignored it and hit the spacebar to continue. Another black screen. Another set of ellipses with my name and a question mark being typed out. So I just stared at it for a second, then, "Can you see this?" I took my headset off and rolled back from my screen a bit. I saw one last set of ellipses with my name and went tearing down the aisle looking at everyone's screen on my way. Everyone was in the middle of an interview with the client on the phone, and my supervisor was in the middle of monitoring a call at the front of the office. It was a very, very small office, so it wasn't hard to look at everyone's screen quickly. I asked my supervisor what the hell he thought he was doing, and he just looked confused. He showed me that he was following along with an interview that was in progress on his monitor and had tapped into the call on his phone. None of the partners were in the office since it was a weekend, so the only people that could have done it were the ones currently on an interview. This all happened not so long after The Matrix, so I was pretty sure for a while that Lawrence Fishburne was trying to contact me. Well, hackers existed all over the place, and as soon as computers existed, the whole idea was to hack it, like the Enigma machine, cracking the code. So someone broke in to the servers of your call center and was having some fun, I guess. Or they really were a sign from the developers in the real universe where, yeah, maybe it's not Morpheus, maybe there's no awesome sunglasses involved, but someone was trying to reach you. Case file number 3219, written by Anonymous. The Asthmatic Ghost. This is from a family of skeptics. When my father was young, his family moved to a large house in the city center with something like 7 bedrooms. He came from a family of 11 children. My aunt took her room by herself in the last bedroom at the end of the hall. Within a few months, she went to my grandfather, who was a frightening man at best, who didn't have time for kids, let alone the crap they talked about, and told him she had been hearing strange noises in her room. She thought one of her brothers was playing a practical joke on her. She described the noises as coughing and choking, and she was having a hard time sleeping. Fast forward 15 years, and my father is at a party talking to a girl. They get onto the topic of where they lived, and as it turns out, she knows the house because she had been living in it up until recently. She seemed embarrassed, but continued to ask him if he'd heard anything in the room at the end of the hall, saying she had slept in there and had heard heavy breathing and coughing. I think this is what really made my father believe, but backtrack 15 years, and my grandfather, with all his skepticism, goes to the man who is renting the house to them and tells them about the noise and wonders if it is the wind getting through or the pipes or something. As it turns out, the man had a daughter who had died of an asthma attack in the room at the end of the hall. This is a story kept pretty hush-hush in my family, at risk of sounding strange. I wouldn't have believed it myself. It sounds like something straight out of a book. But my father is a very serious man who wouldn't fluck around with these things. The house was demolished sometime in the 90s, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately. Case file number 3220, written by Alex470. The Rattle of the Latch. Almost everything spooky was happening to me around the time I was 15. The door in my room was split in half. There's a top half and a bottom half, and they latch together if you want to pretend it's a one-piece solid door. I never latched the top half of the door because with the fan on, the top half would catch the vacuum and shake around the latch, which made this distinct, wildly annoying noise. I would still close the top half, just not latch it. Now that's out of the way. I was about to fall asleep, and both my parents had gone to bed a few hours before. It was around midnight. Laying in bed, I heard someone walking through the hall outside my door, and it sounded similar to my mom walking out of her room, but the sound stopped immediately in front of my door. I waited maybe 30 seconds to have her leave when I became annoyed with whatever she was doing. I assume this was some attempt for a mother to generate more teen angst, since all parents hate their teenage kids, right? I asked what she was doing, and heard nothing in response, when I heard her snoring away in her room. It wasn't my mom in the hallway. Okay, weird, probably my fat Siamese cat. I'm tired, whatever. Moments later, the door handle began to shake quite a bit, like something out of a scary movie, and you anticipate the handle to fully turn? I immediately turned on the light next to my bed when the handle turned silently and the door slowly opened. In an effort to rationally explain it, I glanced at the window, knowing the window must have been open, and it was just a draft. The window was closed, the curtains were slightly flowing, and the poster next to my bed tore off the pins that were holding it to the wall. I'm still not one to believe in ghosts, but I certainly believe there's something out there we don't know about. Case Follower 3221, written by Shadow Fox. Cold silence. It's past midnight, and I'm sitting alone and quiet in my living room. I'm chatting with a buddy online all casually, like any other night. We talked about what we're doing for the weekend. Thump. The fluck was that? I stopped my typing in mid-sentence to perk up my head in the direction of the dark kitchen, my eyes keenly fixated on the wooden door with the golden handles. I strained my ears to hear it. Thump. Ha! Someone is trying to break in again. I jokingly typed to my mate, but in my chest, my heart is fluttering like a terrified sparrow. Hang on, I'm gonna get a bat. My hands are cold. I know every sound in this goddamn house, but not that noise. I know bump, bang, thwack, and creak, but not flucking thump. Now I have my fingers curled around a large, heavy flashlight as a source of light and a weapon. Here I am, a 17-year-old, trying to gather my scattered wits as I entered my dark kitchen. Who or whatever it may be might know someone is there if I turn on the light. I click my thick flashlight and creep around, hearing the thump louder and louder, approaching me like some invisible nightmare. When I hear it around the corner just downstairs, I raise up my illuminated weapon, switching on the lights to stun my enemy, and nothing. I was accompanied by cold silence and seething emptiness. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. It was so damned quiet, unnaturally so. With my arm still raised, my eyes stretched down the steps to grope for something, anything, but nothing was there. I gathered up my things in the living room to call it a night. I held my stuffed ducky extra tight that night. Okay, so a casual ghost story, I would say, most likely. I just find it funny that you have a assigned system in your head to distinguish between different sounds in your house, and where the bumps and bangs and thwacks and creaks, those are normal. But thumps, that's where you draw the line. Spooky. I think if you grow up in an old house, you all have that experience where the pipes and the boards are creaking and the wind causes different reverberations through the boards and everything. You get a sense of what your house is normally doing, producing. But then if something doesn't fit, you know it instantly. It's funny. Case Follower 3222, written by Descent Classic 6848. It was between announcements. I was on a big train station and was waiting for my train to arrive as usual. I saw on the big screen that I would leave from platform number 1 in about 25 minutes or so I went there. I stood there, and with me, quite a lot of people. At that time, traveling by train wasn't that usual for me, so to be sure, I asked a young lady if this is the correct platform. She agreed and said she was waiting for the same train. The screens above the platform also said this is the right platform, so I wasn't worried now. I'm not sure what happened, but in a split second, when I wasn't looking, it seemed like everyone disappeared from the platform and I was basically the only one there. The screens above were now turned off and the train still didn't arrive. Changes of the arrival platform or any delay wasn't announced in any sort of way. They usually play it from the speakers. I went back to the main hall, confused, to look at the big arrival screen to see no signs of my train's arrival. I told the person in the info center about my train not arriving at all, and they said it had already left with no issues or delay from the original platform number 1. It wasn't really that big of a deal for me, as another train arrived normally 2 hours later. A long wait, but it's okay. But this experience really stuck with me. How exactly could the train leave from the platform if I didn't even see or hear it arrive in the first place? Where did all those people go? Did they hear some announcement that I didn't? I didn't have any earphones in, no phone. I paid attention basically the whole time. I have no history of seizures or anything like that. Yeah, similar to a story recently where the woman was in a grocery store and people just disappeared. I think this is a case where, and I like that you mentioned also that you don't usually or never have gotten seizures. A very important fact because, yeah, you could say, okay, you had a blackout and you just were standing there, almost like, not a seizure, but narcolepsy, I think it is. Where that one Mr. Bean character in Rat Race, I believe is a movie. Very funny movie if you haven't seen it. Basically, a millionaire sends people out to chase a certain amount of money at a certain location. Whoever gets there first gets it. And yeah, this Mr. Bean character just falls asleep in the hotel lobby where they were starting from. And like people betting money on him didn't go well. Well, they think it won't go well because he's just sleeping, standing up in the middle of the hotel lobby. But I think if that happened to you or anything like that, a seizure, narcolepsy, you just suddenly started to sleep, well, people would notice. There's so many people around you. I don't think they would just walk by for minutes and minutes while the train came and left. So you may have been transported to that dead pocket server, which I really like to harp on because I think it's so relevant to our existence. We need a buffer area to transfer physically to different universes. And especially if they're far away. That's my theory anyways. So sometimes you can become aware of it without actually physically going there. You went to the info center and someone was there, so this didn't last very long, but long enough to reset things a few minutes in the future for you. Case file number 3223, written by Zamakusi, the man at the fork. Me and my friend were out in the park at night. We passed one guy like 2 blocks ago and went further into the park. It goes across the whole town. Anywho, we're sitting on a bench and we hear a sound from behind. I look, and there's a guy at the other pathway. The pathway forks. So I'm like, no, really, look. He turns and yep, sure enough, he sees a guy too, standing a bit behind us at the path, looking straight at us. So we figure maybe he just noticed some people and is walking by. Nope. Watches us for a good 5 minutes, then starts walking towards us. Figure, fuck that, and walked into the streetlights. Luckily, he didn't follow us and still don't know what he wanted. Awkward moment though when we first walked by him. I was telling my friend I think I got that thing from the movie Alien and it's trying to come out of my belly button. At the time I was randomly bleeding from my belly button for some reason. The same friend in the park. We were walking towards a road to enter into a different part, and as we are walking talking about random crap, I see what looks like, I guess they call shadow people? Looks like a human figure with a hat on. The shadow tips its hat and just turns back to darkness or whatever. I say nothing and figure, oh, maybe the trees and dark played a trick on me. So once we walk past where I saw it, I ask my friend, did you happen to see, and he cuts me off, a shadow tipping his hat at us? Yeah. Case file number 3224, written by Juniper Gale. The Swamp Remembered. A few years back, during my first marriage, my ex-husband and I owned a really nice house. It was built in 2003, as were most of the homes in that neighborhood. It was originally a swamp that, back in the 17 to 1800s, there were Indians known to live in that area. No big deal, I thought, until weird occurrences began to happen. He worked in mills and would leave about 5 a.m. I wouldn't leave for work till closer to 8 a.m. It was a ranch-style house with a front door, back door, and side door. We used a side door solely because that's where the driveway and patio was. The front door was heavy and had a very tricky lock that required a lot of effort to open. With all that in mind, every few mornings, I would walk into the living room and the door would be wide open. My ex swore he never touched it. Why would he? I thought he was just kidding, till he went out of town for a week and it kept happening, every single day. It didn't matter the time of day. I'd walk into the bedroom and come back and it would be open. Well, one day it stopped doing it, whatever it is. Then all of a sudden, things would disappear. I remember both of us looking for a dustpan. We both searched high and low. I remember leaning against a dryer while we talked about how strange it was. We walked into the kitchen, heard a bang in the laundry room, and went to inspect. There was a dustpan on the dryer. There were several instances of nights where I was alone after our divorce, when lights would turn on and off, things would disappear, and unexplainable noises would occur. I know this all sounds stupid and unbelievable, but I was never more thankful when I finally sold that house and was able to move away. Isn't this the first Poltergeist movie, or it's a classic ghost movie, I think in the 90s, or haunting movie, where the home they're living in, this family, was built on an Indian burial ground or something like that? Probably not a good idea to build there, if you're aware. Case file number 3225, written by Much Love Mates. A Ding in the Dark. I arrived at a gig that I was working at tonight, and when I parked outside the club, I went to grab something from my passenger seat, and the ring on my right pointer finger slipped off. I heard it hit the side door on the passenger side and made a little ding noise, so I assumed it was just between the seat and the door, or maybe under the seat. Now, before I go on, I must preface that this is a very important ring to me, with a lot of sentimental value. It's one of those things I always have with me. If I ever were to lose this ring, I would be devastated. Anyways, back to the story. Before I went into work, I checked where I thought it would be between the passenger seat and the door, and it wasn't there. I checked under the seat and in every possible crack and crevice I could see, and I could not find it. I heard the ding noise as it hit the passenger side door, so I assumed it was around there, but nope, it was nowhere to be found. I moved the seats back and forth, checked my pockets, checked cup holders, glove compartment, passenger side door cup holders, back seat, under the seats, etc., etc. I essentially tore my car up looking for this damn ring. I spent probably 10 to 15 minutes looking for it, and I absolutely could not find it. I was somewhat panicking because I really did not want to lose that ring. I even checked outside of the car and under the car because I thought maybe it somehow fell out when I opened the door to start looking for it. I was running out of time because I had to go to work, so I decided to postpone the search. After the gig, I gave my friend a ride home, and as she got out of my car and was saying goodbye, I noticed the ring was sitting perfectly on my passenger seat right in the middle of the seat where she was sitting. I was like, "What the hell? Did you find my ring?" And she said, "No, what are you talking about?" And I explained to her that I had lost my ring in my car earlier that night, before the gig, and couldn't find it. She swore she didn't find it or feel it underneath her. It's a large ring also, so if she sat on it, she would have known 100%, 1000% it was underneath her. I'm feeling unsettled because I spent so much time looking for it, and then to have it just appear like that, perfectly sitting smack dab in the middle of my seat, makes me question reality. I was like the universe was like, "Oh, here you go," but in the most awkward way possible. Okay, this is pure trolling. There's no other explanation. To reappear the ring where your friend was sitting, like, that's just silly. That's someone playing a prank. Like, an extra universal prank. There's no other way to describe it. Unless she was just hatching it like a chicken lays an egg, which I don't think so. Case file number 3226, written by Bubonis. The Sound of the Ice Cream Man. This happened about 16 years ago. I had been living away from home for about 3 or 4 years at that point, and was living alone. In the middle of winter, I had an extremely vivid dream. I was in the garage at my mother's house. The garage was nearly empty, which was unusual considering how much junk was normally in there. I was standing next to a large shelf unit that had a bunch of things in it, including some hefty power tools such as a circular saw. I heard music, and suddenly I was 5 years old again, chasing after the ice cream man who had just passed in front of the house. I heard a crash, turned around, and saw the shelf unit had collapsed and the circular saw had buried its blade in the concrete floor of the garage. I woke up, thought, "How weird," and went about my life. About 6 months later, my mother asked me to help her paint the inside of the garage. I went to her house on Saturday morning, and we emptied the garage into her backyard. I was moving the last of larger and heavier items as she was sweeping the floor. She bent over to use a dustpan to collect the debris. At the same time, I heard music coming from the approaching ice cream truck. The dream I had 6 months earlier flashed into my consciousness and, purely on instinct, I grabbed my mother and pulled her away just as the shelf unit she was standing next to collapsed. The circular saw fell exactly where her head would have been if I hadn't have pulled her away. That episode is the main reason why I'm fairly certain there is more to human existence than what we can see around us, and the only reason why I don't fully call myself an atheist. I fully agree with your description at the end, where the universe is more to it than we know. Simply as that. I mean, we can try to gleam at how the rules work, the real deeper rules, by reading so many stories about them and how people interact with them accidentally. Like, you didn't try to do this, it just happened. And so you had knowledge of the future, deep into the future. I still think it's just a possible future, but one that was most likely to happen. Probably wasn't a defined day, where your mother was at some point going to clean out the garage and ask for your help. The universe, you could say, didn't know what day it would be. You didn't have a sign in your dream of like, okay, it happens on January 14th at 6 p.m. or something like that. No, it was just something that might happen at some point, and it did. And it's a good thing that your conscious mind recalled that dream. It was vivid enough to be stored in long-term memory by your subconscious to be accessed when it was needed. Fantastic. Case file number 3227, written by Dance Dance Yeah. The Shadow Behind the Screen. My girlfriend from college moved back to Denmark after this last semester for good, and I'm back in California for the summer. We decided that Skyping would be the best way to keep in contact, as we are unable to call each other right now. Anyhow, about a week and a half ago we were Skyping, having a good old chat about flights and such, when I suddenly felt something wet on the top of my foot. I was sitting at my desk with my feet under it, so I had no idea how my feet would get wet, so I looked down. My girlfriend watched as I had what must have appeared to be a minor breakdown when I realized that my foot was covered in blood. I ran downstairs to show my dad and told my girlfriend I'd be right back. Me and my dad came up and looked around for anything that could have happened to have dripped blood on my foot, in futility, of course. I went to the bathroom, washed it off, and had no cut or anything that would hint at it being my blood. So I get back. I'm kind of creeped out, but I decided to simply ignore what had just happened when my girlfriend asked me what may remain to this day as the single creepiest question I've ever heard. Who was that guy that walked out of your room when you went to get your dad? My face, when my dad and I were the only ones home that night, pale as a ghost. To this day I brush the incident off as some freak occurrence of random blood and a stranger in my room. But I can't shake the thought of that question because she said she watched him close my door as he left, a door that I left open on my way down. Okay, this is by far, the weirdest story I've read all year. Blood appearing under your desk with no discernible source? I mean, even if there's a man hiding in your room, which is creepy enough, but how does that relate to blood appearing under your desk? Did the man just break in, have a vial of blood to pour and prank you? What the hell is going on with this one? I have no idea. Creepy as hell though. Never sleep in that room again. Case file number 3228, written by Fingerdar. A melody for one listener. I was home alone around 10 at night. My parents and sister were at a horse show and weren't going to get home until around midnight, and I was sitting in our living room listening to music with headphones on. Our dog started barking, and I heard something through my headphones, so I took them off and turned off the radio. I hear music playing. I recognize a song from a little wind-up music maker we have with a stand and some ceramic birds on it in our formal living room, which is right next to the room I'm in. These two rooms are separated by a wall and have two different doorways to go in and out. I'm scared out of my mind. Why would this thing be playing music if I'm here all by myself? I turn on just about every light I can find, and I look away when I pass the doorways. I went into the adjoining hallway and kitchen, each on opposite ends of the two different doors. I want every light on. I don't know why, it just made me feel safe. When all the lights surrounding the room are on, I sneak my hand into that room and flip on the lights, all without looking, because I'm a gutless coward. I'm too curious not to look in now, so I did. I see the wind-up music maker spinning. I see the birds on it slowly going around and around. It's playing music. There's nothing in the room out of the ordinary. I just stood there and stared at the thing while it played and spun, and it stopped after about a minute. I looked at our windows to see if they looked like someone had entered and left, but our windows are really small, and I don't think a person could get through them. Even if they did, why the hell would they wind up a music maker and then leave? and our dogs would have freaked out more if someone broke in, and I probably would have heard them too. Nothing was missing. Everything was in the right place. It was just that wind-up music maker playing, all by itself. Case File 3229, written by Jolly Old Boggin. The Man in the Cream Suit. Back when I was 17, I had just got my license and was driving around with some friends, as you do. Loud music, good times, random pit stops for no reason, the usual. We decided that a drive through the back bush area into the rural area of Australia was a good idea at 10 p.m. Off we drove down one road that would lead us out through the bush into the darkness. There were no lights along this road, only my high beams lit the way. As we were driving, we came across this elderly man in a cream suit with a bunch of slightly wilted flowers with his thumb out. He seemed harmless by all means, and we decided we would pick him up. There was no place for anyone to walk. He was a really nice guy with a well-kept and trim beard. His eyes were incredibly bright as well, a piercing blue color. He said he was out this way because he was visiting the site of where his loved ones died. Apparently, he didn't drive anymore after the accident that had killed them. We were a little unsettled, but in the end we thought nothing of it. He was good-natured and polite to boot. We came up around a corner, and he asked if he could please be dropped off there. We did so, assuming that the site was nearby. He got out of the car, we shook hands with him, wished him well, and sent our sympathy to his loved ones. He replied with, "Have no sympathy for the dead, they are free. May God bless you all, children." He turned and walked straight into the dense bush, and I, crap you not, disappeared within 6 steps. Like the darkness just swallowed a vision of him. It's been a few years now, and there has been no news of any missing people in that area. My friends and I don't know whether it was a dream, a hallucination, or what. We've gone past that same area a few times now, once walking out into the area he went. Found nothing though. You guys encountered the echo of a good man, with piercing blue eyes, and I think he died in that car crash as well, and he was paying them a visit. Man, it's kinda bittersweet, but it's sad nevertheless. Case File 3230, written by J.S. Child. Red Eyes at the Edge of Town. I was 12, 14, not sure exactly how old. My best friend was spending the night at our house. We lived at the tail end of a road on the outskirts of a small town, about 4,000 to 5,000 people. It was night, probably around 9 or 10 p.m. We were just taking a walk, chatting stupid guy stuff. Well, we get on the road and start heading away from the house, and thus out of town, and we immediately see 2 small, glowing red lights close to each other. Now our road was probably some 500 feet level, then dropped about 50 feet over the next 500 feet or so, between 2 small farm plots, until it bottomed out and hit an old back road. The eyes seemed level to us, which made it seem like it was within that first 500 feet. We watched it. I loved stargazing as a kid, and never seen anything like that before, for probably 5 minutes or so, before it seemed to turn away and disappear. I say turn because it seemed to fade instead of disappearing instantly, as a light being turned off would. It seemed to move slightly, but I cannot swear to that. Well, my friend, being a bit braver than me, wanted to go see what it was. Now that it was gone, that is. So we ran back inside and got flashlights and headed back out slowly. We went all the way to the end of the road and everything was cool. But when we got there, we heard what sounded like something large moving down the old road to the right. So we go that way. I am nervous as hell after the red eyes and the loud sound in the woods around us. We finally get to the end of that road, light forest growth on both sides of us. We don't see or hear anything else, so decide to head back. But we both kinda need to pee, so we walk off the road in case any cars come by. I walk off, and I'm unzipping when I trip over something. I reach over and feel a warm, hairy body and scream my lungs out, bolting in terror. My friend rushes over and is half scared, half laughing as he shines a light on what I had tripped over. A dead deer. Nothing else strange happened on our way back, but red eyes and falling over a recently dead animal was enough for me. Another time, My sisters had a slumber party. I was probably like 6 or 8 then, but they were all up watching TV in our living room. Our living room is fully open and has a dining room at one end of it, with only a couch separating the two areas. Beside the dining room was a big sliding glass door that led out to our deck. Well, I'd been harassing my sisters and their friends, bugging them. They were all 5 to 7 years older than me, while they watched TV, when I went into the kitchen and got a drink. The lights were out in all the rooms, just the TV on, but the outside deck had a light on. As I walked back from the kitchen into the dining room, I saw a large man standing on our back deck. Just standing, not walking around. I don't think he could see us. The curtain was drawn, but there might have been a gap in the curtains he could see in through. I just freeze for a second, terrified. Then I walk fast to my oldest sister and tell her someone is watching us. At first, she thinks I'm joking, but I get her and one of her friends to look at the sliding glass doors. We all instantly freak, and then bolt to the back bedroom where my dad is and wake him up. He goes outside and sees the footprints in the snow. There really was someone there, but we still don't know who the creeper was watching us on our back deck. Time for the jokes of the day. Bruce Lee had a brother that was never late. His name was Earl Lee. I told my coworkers I was going to start a band called 10,023 MB. We haven't gotten a gig yet. 3 potatoes are standing on a corner. Which one's the prostitute? The one that says, Idaho. Now that I'm getting older, I realize that Grumpy Old Man isn't a movie, it's a training video. Scientists have discovered that boiling water successfully kills some cancers. They hope to use the same on Leos and Virgos in the near future. Damn zodiac signs. Video up here, YouTube thinks you'll like it, check it out. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.